Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks very much for your patience today. I know we originally planned to do this earlier this morning, and the judge's docket ran long, so thank you for spending your day in EDVA. Further, let me just thank the members of the media for being here as well. I know there's a lot going on, obviously, in this town, and the fact that you're willing to cover hard news and be here means a lot to me, so thank you. Just a moment ago, on the 9th floor of the federal courthouse next door, a former CIA case officer, one of those individuals entrusted with protecting our nation and its secrets, was just sentenced to 19 years in prison. Jerry Chun Shing Lee joins Ames, Regan, Pitts, and Mallory on the wall of infamous traitors prosecuted here in the Eastern District of Virginia. For arguably $840,000, Lee sold out the United States. He abused the trust that his superiors, the U.S. government, and frankly, the people of the United States placed in him. What is worse, when confronted, he employed all of his training to repeatedly lie and obstruct, only to eventually admit a minimum of key facts. Let's be clear and break this down in simple terms regarding precisely what Lee did. He knowingly cozied up to intelligence officials from the People's Republic of China. He accepted hundreds of thousands of dollars, our belief is from the Chinese, by selling out not only his country, but conspiring to transmit secret national defense information. When apprehended, he lied, minimized, then lied some more. Lee was supposed to actually guard our country against espionage, not become complicit in it. What makes his conduct so egregious is that he knew better. He knew better than anyone else the damage that his acts would cause, and nonetheless proceeded to commit the exact crime he was employed to guard against. Rather than be the proverbial fox in the henhouse, he is the rooster that gives the all clear while letting the fox in the back door. Lee knew better. This is not some unwitting government employee who got snookered. He knowingly made a deal with our adversaries out of greed. I want to thank our partners on this case. EDVA's partnership with the National Security Division and the FBI is as strong as it's been in years, and you're seeing the result of that collective effort with this case, the Mallory case, and others. These cases are incredibly difficult to investigate and prosecute because of the sensitivities within the intelligence community. So my extra hats off to the prosecutors and the agents. And this case was investigated by the FBI, as you're going to hear more about in a minute. It was prosecuted by Adam Small, standing immediately to my right, of the National Security Division, and EDVA's National Security Chief, Neil Hammerstrom, who I greatly appreciate him rolling up his sleeves and handling this case personally despite supervising our entire National Security Unit. It's my pleasure now to turn this over to David Burns, who is the Principal Deputy Assistant Attorney General of the National Security Division and a talented national security prosecutor in his own right. David?
Thank you, Zach. When sorrows come, they come not single spies, but in battalions. The 19-year sentence imposed by the court today on Jerry Lee marks an unprecedented third conviction just this past year of former members of the U.S. intelligence community for spying for China. In addition to Lee, Kevin Mallory, a former CIA covert case officer and DIA intelligence officer, was convicted by a jury in this district of espionage charges and lying to the FBI. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Ron Hansen, a former DIA officer, was convicted in Utah following a guilty plea of attempting to transmit national defense information to China, and he received a sentence of 10 years in prison. These cases demonstrate the relentless efforts the Chinese government will undertake to recruit and exploit current and former members of America's intelligence community to gain access to our most sensitive secrets. This is a sophisticated, determined effort by the Chinese intelligence apparatus operating both abroad and in the United States. And it is part of a broader, multi-pronged effort by the Chinese government to not only steal our intelligence and military secrets, but also our technology and intellectual property through cyber theft, co-opting of company insiders, and other means. We have convicted defendants of stealing everything from modified corn kernels and rice seed to nuclear technology. The Department of Justice together with our colleagues at the FBI and across the United States government, will remain vigilant in countering this pernicious threat. I join Zach in congratulating the excellent work of the FBI agents on this case and the Department of Justice prosecutors from the Eastern District of Virginia and from the National Security Division. I'd now like to introduce Alan Kohler of the SAC for counterintelligence at the FBI's Washington field office.
Thanks, David. Today's sentencing is a testament to the FBI's commitment to protect the U.S. from espionage, which is of the utmost important and a top priority for the FBI. Jerry Lee was once a trusted government employee who betrayed his oath and provided classified information to our adversaries. Lee knowingly aided a foreign government and put our country's national security at risk. By providing classified CIA information to China, he also threatened the safety and security of innocent people, including his former colleagues. As a CIA officer, Lee was trained in similar tradecraft as Chinese intelligence officers. Among many skills, Lee learned how to use covert communications as a CIA officer. Unfortunately, he brazenly turned around and used those skills to aid the Chinese government, to the detriment of the country he pledged to serve. For several years, Lee's greed prevailed above his honor and duty as a former trusted intelligence community professional. He provided classified national defense information to people he knew to be intelligence officers with the Chinese government. By providing this information, Lee violated his oath to serve the United States as a government employee and instead put our nation at risk by giving to a foreign government what he knew would cause damage to the United States or harm the people he had sworn to protect. And he did all this for money. Unfortunately, we've seen this before. The Chinese are actively targeting former government clearance holders to provide sensitive or classified information to aid our adversaries and injure the United States. The United States intelligence community and Department of Justice will not allow current or former government professionals to sell out their country for money. The FBI will continue to work to ensure that our nation's secrets are safe and secure. The public expects that our government and our employees will dutifully protect and serve the United States, just as we committed to in our oath. I know that the majority of intelligence community employees who come to work every day are honorable and dedicated, but we will not stand by while others violate the trust, dishonor the profession in such an egregious way. I also want to thank our partners within the intelligence community, U.S. Attorney's Office from the Eastern District of Virginia, and the Department of Justice. We are committed to ensuring the safety of classified information because we know firsthand that it puts our country and our people in danger. I also want to recognize the men and women of the FBI who were part of this investigation for many years, who work hard every day to protect the American people and uphold the Constitution of the United States.
We'll take some questions. Pete? Mr. Twillier, one of your prosecutors said today in court that it's all but certain that he put lives at risk. Why do you say that? Do you just assume that based on the money he got, or what's your bottom line on this, with the damage he did?
I think what you heard today, and I'm going to confine my comments to obviously the public record, and I think what you heard in court today, Pete, was that the information that this individual had on his person in these notebooks, as well as the Slack file that was found on the thumb drive, and in the taskings that he was given by the Chinese. As you heard the judge instruct today, we have to prove by preponderance of the evidence, what the harm was and whether any information was transferred. Obviously, only plead guilty to a conspiracy. I think what you heard were our prosecutors adduce their belief that information was exchanged, because otherwise, why would it have received these cash payments? I think I'm obviously going to respect the judge's ruling and finding, which is that he believes some information was passed over, and he believes at least a substantial portion of the $840,000 cash deposits came from the Chinese. And so I think the way I feel about it, and I think what was being stated in court today, is that put people in danger. Are we pinpointing the precise information that was handed over? No, but that information that he had absolutely the potential to put lives at risk. And frankly, the information that was contained, if that was compromised and passed over, that would put people at risk. And that's as much detail as I think I can go into.
Matt?
And somewhere along those lines, like I say, in this and in the Mallory case, you get to the sentencing where there's this wide gulf between what you say happened and what the defense is willing to admit even after pleading guilty. Is that just a is that just a byproduct of espionage cases in terms of being able to nail them down on exactly what they did?
Let me speak in general, and I'll let my two colleagues speak to this as well. But my own take, Matt, based on my experience here in this role, has been these cases are exceedingly difficult for a number of reasons. One is, yes, these are individuals who are sophisticated. They know how to cover their tracks. They know how to, do their best not to get caught. And so sometimes it's not as though you can catch them red-handed with a proverbial smoking gun. So I think that can be part of it. I think another aspect of this is anytime you're dealing with classified information, national defense information, there's a push-pull about what it is we're able to use in our prosecution, frankly. We're balancing equities between making sure individuals are held accountable and also not tipping our hand to our adversaries that something may or may not be legitimate, valid, trying to confirm, something that was leaked. But David, I don't know.
No, I agree.
Okay.
Rachel?
So you can't say whether Jerry Lee was at least partially responsible for the difficulties the U.S. intelligence community has had in China in the past few years.
I think what I can say to that is, I can't answer your question specifically, Rachel, but what I can say is I have no problem stating affirmatively that individuals like Jerry Lee and anybody who's involved with Chinese intelligence officers are certainly making it more difficult for us to interact and deal at face value, with the Chinese.
Can you go into detail about the taskings that Mr. Lee was asked of by the Chinese government, some of the cases adjudicated?
So I really have to restrain my comments to what's in the public record, and frankly, I don't want to misstate anything here. I want to be helpful, and so what I pledge to do, to the extent that information, those taskings are in publicly filed documents, Josh and I'll work with you to get you that directly. I just don't want to misstate anything.
And for Mr. Burns, what does this case sort of display as a whole about, you talked about sort of the sophistication of the Chinese efforts to penetrate former and current officials. Can you go into detail a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say when you look at the cases that we've charged recently, we're talking about Mallory and Hansen and of course Lee, and there are other cases out there that aren't espionage cases, but they are Section 951 cases, acting at the direction and control of the foreign government. A number of those cases involve China. And you combine that with what we're seeing, that's the traditional espionage side. You combine that with what we're seeing on the economic espionage side, and I think it's fair to say that in terms of prosecutions, we are at a high watermark in those prosecutions, both traditional espionage and economic espionage when it comes to China.
Yeah. On the economic front, DOJ has been very public in recent years about the China initiative. I'm curious about what has been done really recently in furtherance of that initiative, whether it be at Main Justice, at the U.S. Attorney's offices, to really ramp up even off of some initial lessons learned in some of those investigations and prosecutions.
Right, and we can go back and provide you with more information on that. There are a number of cases over the past year since the China initiative was initially announced in, I believe it was November of 2018, where we've had theft of trade secrets to benefit foreign governments cases. And then also in the FARA side, the FCPA is a component of it as well. And then of course we have the traditional intelligence espionage cases. But we can provide you a list of cases that we brought.
Pete? Mr. Terwilliger, can I ask you one question? You mentioned some of the previous spy cases here. Robert Hansen made marks on a post office box on Foxhall Road. Is it harder now to make these cases when people are not using dead drops, they're doing it all in cyberspace outside the country?
Well, I'm going to let the FBI respond directly to that. Pete, what I would say is yes. I mean, I think with end-to-end encryption, what we used to call going dark, now lawful access, all of our criminal enforcement efforts have gotten more difficult. I think that is just the same on the intelligence community side. In addition, with cryptocurrency and other ways that you can mask these payments. In some ways, our tools are more sophisticated and their tradecraft is more sophisticated. But let the FBI specifically respond to their investigative efforts.
Thanks. Yeah. So as Zach said, the internet's making our lives more difficult, both investigatively, but it's also making the work of spies easier. With encryption, it's easier to hide your information, it's easier to move it overseas. The actors don't have to be, as you said, down the street putting chalk marks on post box. It also makes, to the question earlier about targeting current employees or former employees, much easier. With sites such as LinkedIn, other social networking sites where former U.S. government employees are out there, it makes it an easier place for foreign intelligence services to target us and find us. So that's become a big part of our training for onboarding employees. It's part of our continuous vetting, and it's also part of the offloading for exiting employees to be on the lookout for approaches such as this. Great question.
Do you have any evidence that the Chinese are using financial information as part of this targeting effort?
Yeah, that's probably, I would say that the Chinese are going to use whatever information they can get, and there's been publicly available information out there about the OPM hacks, for example, and others. I won't get into specifics about what we know or what we don't know, but I would say that the Chinese will do whatever it takes to identify, spot, and assess, and look for targets to recruit.
There was one specific piece of information came out today, said that among the information he had and you believe he disclosed was names of 8 clandestine CIA sources. The defense came back and said, well, if those guys had been harmed, if those guys had been exposed in these years, we'd have heard about it. So I guess one, I want to see if there's any flaw in the defense's rationale of that, and two, it talked about everything being maxed out at the secret level. With 8, the names of clandestine CIA sources, is that not top secret?
Let me see if I can answer your question, Matt. So first, without talking about the assertion of the 8 names, let me say this. I think that the way the defense characterizes it, we would know there's a problem. I don't think that's true. I mean, if someone wound up harmed physically, that's possible, but we have no idea what was done with the information. We have no idea. We have very, very talented adversaries on the other side, and they may be able to mine intelligence to do countless things that we'll never know. That may have been, able to, that information, whatever information was ultimately passed to the Chinese, we'll probably never be able to do a complete damage assessment because we don't know what other information they have. So I think it is a bit small to say, well, we would know already if something bad had happened. And that may or may not be true regarding those individuals in physical harm or financial harm or outing or losing their careers. But in general, any piece of information in our adversaries' hands could be used in a multitude of ways. And let me just also say, I think you heard Judge Ellis mention this, and he wanted this publicized, and as a result, I'm very thankful for all of you spending your day here with us. We've now seen multiple individuals, certainly Mallory, we have another case charged here, and obviously everybody's innocent until proven otherwise, but you are seeing more and more in the DMV area these individuals who are whether it's a leaker, whether it's someone who's being paid, whether it's someone who's being actively recruited, in my opinion, being pretty cavalier with national defense information. So I think a 19-year sentence, in this era of criminal justice reform, I hope that sends an extremely sobering message to anybody who's thinking of cashing in on the security clearance.
Time for one more. Good. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Thanks, buddy. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Matt.